We had some musical contemplation. Yeah. Let's see where I'm at here. So with that, listen, again, been a kind of a tough time on carrying my family here with the passing of my mother-in-law. I want to thank all the councillors that sent regrets. It certainly does make a difference. Thank you for your kind remarks. And with that, I will look for attendance. Jonathan.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have all members in attendance with a few exceptions. We have regrets from Councillor Bell with alternate Councillor David Snutch in attendance. We have alternate Councillor McDonald from the town of Midland in attendance. We have regrets from Councillor Norcross, regrets from Councillor Sandu with alternate Councillor Jonathan Scott in attendance, and regrets from Councillor Snell with alternate Councillor Joe Belanger in attendance. And you have your quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody that needs to leave early today? Councillor Dolan?
12:30, Your Worship.
We should be done, I think. Councillor Cox, but I don't want to jinx it, right?
Just before 11?
Just before 11?
Yeah.
Councillor Burkett? Same time, I assume?
Thank you, yes.
Councillor Miskimins?
Yeah, just before 11.
And Councillor Smith?
Myself and Councillor Belanger at 11:30.
11:30. Well, okay. Councillor Laux?
11:30.
Well, then I can probably say at 11:30 won't have a quorum anymore, so that'll so we will be done by then. So I'll look for approval of the agenda with Councillor Dolan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Walker that the agenda for the February 13th, 2024 meeting of County Council be approved.
Okay, everybody's heard the motion. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Do I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest by any member of council? If you find yourself in that situation later, then please put your hand up and declare at that time. We don't have any presentations or deputations, so the consent agenda. Councillor Burkett.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, moved by myself, second by Councillor Smith, that the Council communications and proclamations January 31st, 2024 to February the 12th, 2024 have been given due consideration be received.
Okay, on the proclamations, any comments or questions? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Adoption of the council minutes. Deputy Warden Coughlin.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Worship. And through you, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Locke, that the following council minutes be confirmed and adopted and the Committee of Whole reports be confirmed. County Council minutes January 30th, 2024. County Council confidential minutes January 30th, 2024. Committee of the Whole report January 30th, 2024. And Committee of the Whole report confidential report January 30th, 2024.
On those minutes, any questions arising? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So we're into the presentation and considerations of the Committee of the Whole. Chair Cox.
Good morning. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Evans that performance management recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report dated January 30th, 2024, including the confidential item, be approved.
Any questions regarding any items to be pulled from performance? No, then all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Chair Leduc, Human Services.
All right, thank you. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by alternate Councillor Scott, that the Human Services recommendation contained within the Committee of Whole report dated January 30, 2024 be approved.
Any items to be pulled from Human Services? Not seeing any, so all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And Chair Dolan.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Measures that the Corporate Services recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report dated January 30th, 2024 be approved.
Okay. Anything on corporate? Not seeing any, so all in favor of the motion? That is carried. Thank you. We have no special committee reports today. Oh, yes, we do. Actually, we have the Governance Committee, so Deputy Warden Caldwell.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Gordon that the Governance Committee recommendations contained within the Governance Report dated January 30th, 2024 be approved.
Okay, on that, any comments on the Governance Committee? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Presentations, considerations of County Officers Report. We have none. Motions to which notices have been given. We have none. No notices of motion. and no closed session. So consideration of bills, normally I have Councillor Norcross. So Councillor Mike Smith, here, I'll catch you out of the blue. Would you move our bills, please?
Worship, that bills number 7050-24, 7051-24, 7052-24, 7053-24, and 7054-24 be enacted as bylaws of the County of Simcoe.
And can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Walker. And on those bills, any questions? All in favor? That is carried. So do I have announcements, any member of council? Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. At this moment in time, as many people may be aware, Barrie Easter Seals has their annual event, Dancing with the Easter Seal Stars. I have been roped in, I guess you could say, to being one of the dancers on stage this year. So I will be promoting this over social media, and any support, spreading the word, helping raise money for this incredible cause would be appreciated on every level, from myself down to the children who actually receive the benefits of my efforts of poorly coordinated dancing. Thank you.
I actually will pay to see that. So is there any other comments? Councillor Brian Smith.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I would also pay to see that. Just a quick announcement. Wasaga Beach this week has been celebrating our Breaking the Ice celebration and our 50th birthday in opening our new facility, our new double pad arena and a library. And this weekend, there still are a few tickets left, very few, for Burton Cummings and Blue Rodeo. I think we're down to about 70 tickets for each of those. So if anyone's wishing to come, please do so. It'll be a great weekend, a great time, and I'm sure there'll be some dancing there as well, Councillor Fowler. So hopefully see you there. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, any other announcements? Yes, Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a reminder that February 24th is fast approaching, and that is the coldest night of the year. It's a big fundraiser for all of the shelters across Canada. Our shelters in Simcoe County that we proudly support, and that our General Manager, Mina, looks after so well with his capable staff. Can't do it all, so we definitely need the support of the community to help co-fund and contribute towards our homeless shelters, more in need than ever these days. So I'd encourage folks, if you're interested in making a donation, it may be through your town, or it may be through a private group you've already got going, or maybe you've never heard of this before. Just Google coldest night of the year, and you can look for the participating group in your community or donate online. And it goes a long way to helping the shelter's operational funding needs for the coming year. So it's a big deal. It's February 24th, and those of you who would like to come out and walk, you can sign up, get your pledge sheet, and there's a short route and a longer route. And no matter what, I think you get a toque out of the deal and some hot chocolate and usually some chili or something, and it's for a great cause. Thank you.
Thank you. And I might put you on the spot now. Do you have a councillor you'd like to introduce to us today?
Well, thank you very much, Your Worship. Yes, I do. In the gallery, we have my current councillor, Beth Prost, who Wednesday, February 14th, wave your arms, Beth, will be sworn in as our new deputy mayor, and she'll be assuming her seat in this house that's being filled so ably by Councillor McDonald in the absence of course, our now deceased former Deputy Mayor Conton. So, so definitely welcome Beth to the fold. I think she's going to be sworn in shortly and indoctrinated in the secret handshake and all of that, and she'll join us at our next regular meeting here at Council. So thank you.
And certainly come on down and join us after the meeting so we can all get to know you a bit, if that's okay, Councillor. Any other announcements? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so we're in the confirmatory bylaw. I'll put you on the spot again, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Burkett, that bill number 7055-24 be enacted as a bylaw of the County of Simcoe.
Thank you, Councillor. All in favor? That is carried. And now I'll look for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Fowler, second by Councillor Measures, that we now adjourn at 9:12 a.m. until meeting. Oh, be adjourned at 9:12. Yes. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And let's just roll right into our committee of the whole here. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, then I'll look for my clerk for roll call and welcome city reps.
Thank you, Your Worship. In addition to those present at council, we have city representatives present: Aurelia Councillor Durnford, Aurelia Councillor Fallis, Barrie Councillor Hamilton, Aurelia Mayor McIsaac, Barrie Councillor Nagusi, Barrie Mayor Nuttall, and regrets from Barrie Councillor Riepma. And you have your quorum. Thanks, Warden.
Thank you very much. So I'll look for approval of the agenda. Councillor Dolan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Laux that the agenda for the February 13th, 2024 meeting of the Committee of the Whole be approved.
Any questions on the agenda? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Do I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest by any member of council? If you find yourself in that situation later, please put your hand up and declare. Presentations and delegations. No, I don't think we have any, so I'll appoint Chair Cox for performance management.
Item 5.1, museum, museum activity report. May I have a move and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Fowler, that item CCW 2024-046, dated February 13th, 2024, regarding museum activity from April to December 2023 be received. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
And now, Chair Leduc, if you'd take Human Services, please.
Thank you, Warden. We're on to item 6, the consent agenda. I have the following consent item having been given due consideration be received, and it is the Simcoe County Housing Corporation Board minutes. Anybody want to pull this for discussion? May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Fryer. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We're on to section 7. It's Human Services, Community Services. I have the 2024 It Starts campaign. Anybody want to pull this report for any comments or questions? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Deputy Warden Coughlin, seconded by Councillor Laux. And the recommendation is that item CCW 2024-023, dated February 13th, 2024, regarding the Simcoe County Local Immigration Partnerships 2024 Public Education Campaign to reduce racism and discrimination, It Starts, be received, and that members of the municipalities be encouraged to participate in the It Starts campaign between March 1st to March 31st, 2024, including hosting a flag raising and issuing a municipal proclamation supporting the initiative and recognizing March 21, 2024 as the International Day of Elimination of Racial Discrimination. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Section 8, Human Services Long-Term Care Committee of Management. Yes. Oh, sorry. I just thank you, Mina. We have a photo booth outside for It Starts, so today go out and take some photos and we can start the campaign as soon as we want today. So take some photos for everybody. So thank you for that reminder. Appreciate that. I wasn't at the review, so. Okay, we're on to Human Services Long-Term Care Committee of Management. So we have 8.1 Long-Term Care and Senior Services Accreditation Canada update. Question concerns with this one? Councillor Cox?
No, I just wanted to make a comment and congratulate Jane and all the staff and all the homes on their full accreditation. Very well done. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Well said. We received a 98% score on that with minor issues really when it comes down to it. And a few of us, all the governance committee was involved in this accreditation with staff, and it was well done, well received. And so we are in good hands with Jane and her staff. So yes, thank you, Councillor Cox. Okay, then moved by Councillor Cox, seconded by Councillor Fryer. That the recommendation is that item CCW 2024-057, dated February 13, 2024, regarding long-term care and senior services accreditation Canada update be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We are on to other matters of consideration. Does anybody have any other matters of consideration to take up? Seeing none, I turn it back to you, Warden.
Thank you. A rather short meeting for the city reps. Thank you for coming out. Be sure to get down in the foyer, though, and get your pictures taken with our It Starts campaign before you leave. Okay. Thank you. Don't usually have agendas this light. Seems to be kind of a fluke here. So I will turn it over to Councillor Dolan. We might as well keep rolling.
Thank you so much. So we're on to item 10, corporate services, 10.1. And I believe we're going to have a short or a presentation prior to discussion on this item. Jim Elliott, did you want to start us off?
Thank you, Chair Dolan. This is an important report impacting those who receive our recycling services across the county. So we felt it would be really helpful for staff to do a brief presentation on the impacts of the changing processes around the recycling collection services here. So I'd like to introduce Rob McCullough, who's our Director of Solid Waste Management, along with Laura Barrett, who's our Collections Manager in Solid Waste.
Good morning, Council. So I'm here to present CCW 2024-022 with respect to ineligible source recycling. Just as a background and a reminder, as we have presented this previously to Council, Blue Box regulation stipulates that producers of recycling, so the Coca-Colas, the Pepsis of the world, are now responsible for recycling. Through that, they can designate a producer responsibility organization, so we also call that a PRO for short, to take care of the system. And with that, Circular Materials Ontario actually is the main PRO. So through the legislation, they have given Circular Materials Ontario the ability to make the decisions for the collection. So transition is January 1, 2024. So we have successfully transitioned for the County of Simcoe, and it goes until December 31st, 2025. So far, just as a quick update, residents have not seen any difference in their recycling collection as we had transitioned January 1st, 2024. We are only in the background seeing that difference in where the recycling is going. So we're going to a different transfer station right now. Post-transition, however, we will see a significant change. As of yet, we don't have all of the details, but of note is that CMO is fully responsible for recycling collection, so we have no real say in that. So with the legislation, there is a designation of what we call eligible sources and ineligible sources. And so the Blue Box regulation stipulates that all producers shall collect recycling from eligible sources. So those eligible sources are residential locations, including multi-residential locations, schools, and nonprofit long-term care and senior residences. The ineligible sources are what the topic of conversation is today. So as of January 1, 2026, these locations are not required through the regulation to have recycling collected curbside. Or the management of any recycling anywhere. So that places that onus on municipalities if we are going to manage recycling. So examples of ineligible sources are all businesses, places of worship, daycares, campgrounds, public-facing and internal areas of municipal buildings, so your libraries, arenas, that sort of thing, and non-for-profit organizations. So currently, we have done a little bit of an assessment with respect to how many IC&I, so industrial, commercial, institutional properties, do we service, and how do we have, and how many we service. So we actually have approximately 5,600 locations that exist. We only service about 2,100 of them. And so this actually really represents about 1.4% of all the serviced units in the County of Simcoe. So our current level of service for those 2,100 locations, and really for all of residents, we do accept recycling in the carts. So there's 360-liter carts, a maximum of 2 carts with some occasional overflow allowed. Now, the reason why we don't service every single IC&I location is because we are able to service with our current collection truck. So we're only able to service a certain amount. Fits in the cart. A lot of IC&I locations are larger and require a larger bin, like a front-end bin, and we do not have that service right now. So larger locations currently do not receive recycling collection from the County of Simcoe, but the smaller locations, those 2,100 properties, do. One other thing to note is that we designate a property as commercial and not just the unit. So if we're thinking about a plaza that has, say, 6 separate units in it, that whole property is actually only able to put out 2 carts. And so that's how we distinguish. So then if they want more recycling than that, they would have to receive private collection. So it's a per property limit currently and not a per unit limit on one property. So the other option is bringing recycling to the facility free of charge. So we don't have any limits there. Both residents and commercial businesses can bring recycling to the facilities. So what's going to happen post-transition? So we, through the report, have recommended that we discontinue curbside collection of recycling at all ineligible sources. One thing to remember is that many people often think that recycling makes us money, so it doesn't cost us anything. And while revenue is received for recycling, the cost to collect, the cost to transfer, and the cost to process actually outweighs the revenue that we receive. So our the other thing is that with discontinuing curbside collection, we would continue to receive recycling regardless of the source at a fee at all waste management facilities starting in 2026. What this does mean, though, that we would charge a fee not just for businesses, but also for residents that use the facilities. We would encourage residents to continue to put their material curbside, as Simcoe is required to service residents curbside. Simcoe is also required to set up locations for residents that don't have curbside collection. So as of yet, we have not heard from Simcoe what their plan is for that, whether they would come to us and ask for that or set up separate locations. But that's not something that we would be required to do. Through the regulation, Simcoe is required to collect at a location for those locations that don't have curbside collection. With that, I think I'm passing it on to Rob, who's going to continue.
Good morning, Council. It's a strange situation that brings us before you today and arguing against increased diversion. As you know, that's not something that we're want to do. We're very much environmentalists, and we really want to divert as much material. But there's real rationale behind this decision, as we don't have a mandate. We're not required by legislation to provide this service to anything other than residential. And now that that residential requirement has been removed from us, it makes it very difficult to consider a program for just the IC&I sector. The cost to provide that recycling collection in that sector would be 6 to 7 times, this is our own estimation, it could go higher, 6 to 7 times the cost per location. And you can imagine that. Right now, we track how many kilometers the collection trucks drive. And for every 100 kilometers that a collection truck drives, they pick up from 446 units. If we were to set up a contract just for IC&I collection, they would pick up in 100 kilometers, 6 locations. You can imagine the cost that would drive. The environmental impacts of that separate service, basically a collection truck going out and blowing diesel fumes for not very much work, is difficult to support as well. There's a fourth reason, not on this, but certainly contained in the report, is the logistics of it. You got to remember, we have a fleet of 79, 80 trucks on an average day that are going out. For the downtown business cores, we want to get that collected before things get busy, so we start at 6 o'clock, and between 6 and 7 o'clock, we can clean it all up. That's because we have 80 trucks. If we set up a collection contract just for IC&I, we're talking probably, well, on a number scale, you'd probably be looking at 1 truck, but 1 truck's not going to be able to cover the whole county. So you're probably looking at 8 or 9 trucks. There's no way that those 8 or 9 trucks could perform the 6 a.m. collection and all the downtown business cores that we have in the county in the time required. So there's major logistical challenges that come with that as well. The recommendations we have to the province is most important. We believe they've erred in the setup of the legislation. Don't get us wrong, We completely support the legislation. We think the direction they're going, making producers responsible, has some major advantages going forward in reformulation of packaging to reduce the amount that we're causing the issues we're causing for the environment. However, we think they should have made all producers responsible for everything they generate, not just for what they generate that goes and sold to residential units, schools, and not-for-profit long-term care homes. At the very least, they should have included small generator IC&I locations, the ones that are best and most capable of receiving collection from our types of curbside trucks and carts. They should have made those responsible. Anyone larger, they should have made them, that business itself, specifically responsible for recycling and waste diversion in that location. There is legislation that is Reg 103. It does talk about IC&I locations, but the Auditor General did a report a few years ago and saw that the provisions within the legislation made it such a large business or IC&I location that it only captured 2 to 3% of the IC&I locations in the province. So we think that also needs to be amended. We have already brought that message in a meeting with the Minister of the Environment in Roma, attended by a number of county politicians and senior staff. We have, I think, delivered a strong message. I continue to correspond with senior members of the Ministry of Environment based on that discussion. But we also have included in here a draft schedule letter to the Minister. It's Schedule 1 in the report that we think we can continue that request of the province to cover these locations as we go forward. We have looked at those alternatives. I'll go over this slide very quickly. We have looked at, could we do a separate collection for that? Yes, it's going to be expensive, going to have the logistical issues. It's only 1.4% of the number of locations we currently do. It's less than half of the actual number of IC&I properties, so there might be a question about bonusing. Basically, if we were to do it, the entire tax base is going to have to essentially subsidize that small portion of the IC&I section that gets the service. Separate collection trucks will be traveling the same roads, therefore there's environmental impacts. It's going to be difficult to distinguish between eligible and ineligible carts. We have to probably go out to all the IC&I locations we service and swap out a different colored cart lids so that the collection truck would know who to service on those streets, because we are imagining they'll all be set out at the same time. It's another issue that we see is the downtown businesses. When 2026 comes, we know it's not going to be Miller that's doing the recycling collection. We don't know who that new contractor is. We have some suspicions, but it has not yet been addressed by the province or Simcoe. I think they're in final negotiations. I think that's likely to be announced within the next month or so, but we don't know yet who that's going to be. I think it's going to be very difficult for them to drive down, let's say, any downtown core Alliston, and you can imagine you've got businesses on the bottom, apartments on the top. They're required to provide the service to the apartments. They're not required to provide the service to the business. How they're going to make that distinguishment on the main street is going to be next to impossible. So again, we think the 391-21 regulation should be updated in the future to include those ineligible sources, at the very least, the ones that we can provide service to with the same type of truck without causing a bunch of extra emissions for that purpose. So therefore, this is basically the question slide. We've just reprinted staff's recommendations that essentially starting January 1st, 2026, we wouldn't provide ineligible sources with county-provided recycling collection. As of January 1st, the county's waste management facilities would accept recycling, but from all sources, but at a fee. We haven't determined what that fee is yet, but as Laura went through in her presentation, recycling has a cost. The Simcoe, Circular Materials, which is very, very busy getting all the municipalities transitioned like we did January 1st. There's still a third of the province that needs to transition before January 1st, 2026. So they're very busy doing that, but they have to set up a system for recycling drop-off for those locations that don't receive curbside service. So those residents that may be seasonal on islands, on private roads that we can't get down, they will have to set up a service for them for drop-off. They have not yet talked to us whether they're going to use our facilities, although we have looked at what that service would be, and they have already told us we have to keep our sources separate. So we would have to double all the infrastructure for the recycling to keep the approved IC&I or the approved residential units in one location or one bin, and the IC&I, which they're not going to compensate, in the other bin. And that brings an incredible amount of difficulty for us. So at this point right now, we think the easiest way to do it is try and encourage people to put their recycling out curbside. But if they bring it to us, we will divert it, but there's going to be a cost because there continues to be a cost for recycling. And we would mix all the IC&I and the residential just like we do right now. And with that, through you, Madam Chair, Laura and I would be happy to take questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to take privilege and start on this one, if you don't mind. So this has been ongoing since at least before 2016, when I was president at AMO. The whole concept of extended producer responsibility absolutely makes sense. In my opinion, the Circular Economies Act is the way to move forward, but it's kind of been watered down over that time. Lobbyists from the different producers have made some changes in the legislation, but I really truly believe that this is an unintended consequence that the Ministry of Environment and Conservation and Parks hasn't truly wrapped their head around yet. I want to commend Mr. McCullough for making some very practical arguments at the Roma conference, at the delegation to the minister, about not only the consequences to the environment and how now you would have instead of the mom and pop barber shop throwing their Coke can in a recycling bin, they're now going to throw it in the garbage because they don't get recycling anymore. But also the economies that he's explained so well today with the putting a 100-kilometer truck to pick up 4 items. So I'm not under an illusion that this isn't going to take some political fortitude. You know, everything is our fault. Doesn't matter if it's a bad teacher or the climate change, everything's our fault. So when it comes down to a small business not getting the recycling picked up, they're going to come and complain to us. And very much the communication has to be very strong that this is not our responsibility. And because it was in the past and isn't in the future, it's going to take some communications to get that across. But if we do it for them, if we spend millions and millions of our taxpayers, residential taxpayers' money to look after this small segment of the population, they're going to be happy, right? Because they don't care who delivers the service to them as long as they put that cart out and somebody picks it up. But then there's no noise to the province. There's no advocacy from the province other than us. We need the advocacy from all our IC&I folks on top of us to make this happen, because it's the small businesses that should be talking to the BIAs, that should be talking to the Ministry of the Environment to make sure that this is fixed. So with that, I will open the floor for questions and comments. Councillor Scott.
Thank you. First, a procedural question. Is it possible we could split this and vote on the recommendation related to the letter separately? I think that one will be unanimous, but the other parts might not be. Seeing a nod. So just a few questions to the director. Where are the 2,100 properties? Are they predominantly downtown businesses? And then with that, what happens with a business that has upstairs residential tenants? How is that sorted out? And then two other questions. Do we need to do this now? Make this decision now? What if our advocacy was successful? And when would we set the fee? I assume that's part of the consideration on your timeline. But also you mentioned a communications plan, and I'm just curious what that's about. I mean, Mayor Dolan's correct. This is going to be seen as taking away a service and stepping back from producer responsibility in the circular economy and recycling, regardless of whether it's the county's fault. I think you're right, Mayor Dolan, we will get the blame, and that this is a really unfortunate situation to find ourselves in, where we're going to be perceived as stepping back from recycling. I get the logic of what you're saying, but it doesn't mean we're happy about it.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, we're not happy about it either. As far, and I'm bad with multi-part questions, so you're going to have to remind me, but I'm going to start with why we're bringing this now. If it is the decision of council that you want us to provide that continued service, we have to go out for a new collection contract. The timing to get new collection trucks is right around 2 years right now. We'd be in pretty bad shape already if we went out now to get a collection contract. We'd probably have to allow some older trucks to be able to be used rather than new ones, but still, it's in such a state of flux right now because no one knows. They haven't basically announced many of the areas on who will be doing the collection post 2026. So even collection contractors don't know how many horses they have to be able to put after that. Second most, if we want to use this as an advocacy tool to the ministry, I think it's stronger that we're not providing it. Perhaps there'd be a communication that we would generate that's going to explain the reason why that's not going to happen as of January 1st, 2026. Here's your options, including reaching out to your local member of provincial parliament that could advocate for the inclusion of small IC&I units as eligible in the legislation, the existing legislation with respect to that. The second question, I believe, was apartments up. IC&I below. I agree with you. I think it's going to be next to impossible, and no collector wants to get out of their truck, especially with automatic side loads like we have now, flip up the truck and decide, I'm not sure where that's coming from, whether that's the residential unit or the other location. We have not got any guidance from Simcoe how they intend to do that. They have very specific contract language towards that. But in the practical world, the one we all live in, how's that driver on that truck going to be able to assess that? Or are they going to have crews go out, handle different areas at different times and do that? Are they going to somehow require us to remove those bins there are bins from those commercial units? I'm not sure that we would remove them, right? That'll be a council decision. And I'm sorry, I might have missed the third part to your question.
No, you got almost all of it. My only other question was, where are the 2,100 businesses? It sort of sounds...
They're spread without the county, very much more centered in the downtown cores, but that doesn't mean that there's not a welding shop out in a country road somewhere. And that's why we have to run them all, because if we're providing the same level of service that we've always wanted to do, we need to treat all IC&I separate, or else it might be considered as bonusing.
Okay, and just a final comment. I liked what I saw from the District of Muskoka, where they are servicing downtown BIAs, and I assume that's their way around the bonusing issue. That might be something that we could consider, so we're at least maintaining those downtown businesses.
Many of the areas in the county, however, might not necessarily have BIAs in their downtown cores. Yeah. I'm not certain of all of them. I'm sure Alliston is. Is Coldwater? I don't know.
No,
I'm not certain.
I agree. It would be chicken and egg, but if creating a BIA was the cost to pay to keep your recycling, some businesses might suddenly be in favor of it.
And then we run into the logistical problem of needing to service all those downtown cores between 6 and 7 in the morning. How do you set a fleet up to be able to do that?
No, I agree. There aren't any good options, but thinking out loud a bit here, because the recommendations are, I think, you're attempting to find the lesser evil, but I still don't like an evil at all.
I understand.
Thank you. So first we have a moved by Councillor or alternate Councillor Scott to split the motion. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Leduc. All those in favor? That is carried. And I saw Councillor Smith, Brian Smith, and Councillor
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I couldn't agree more that, you know, the more we do, it will be our fault. And so the more that we plan to take on, I think the less the province is actually going to have to come to the realization that their decisions aren't good in this case. And so I'd like to see at some point in the not too distant future if the county could take the lead on this and prepare some packages for us so as that we're all speaking the same language that we could then in our own communities take out to our chambers of commerce, our BIAs, any associations that we have, and have those conversations so as that we can get people writing to our MPs, our MPPs, in order to make it clear that, you know, this needs to be dealt with sooner than later. So I'd just like to see something come back to council with that respect in a package form so we can get on this as quickly as possible. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Hamlin, my apologies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, it's clear to me that what the province has done is spoken to the representatives of the producer industry and tried to figure out something that makes sense to them financially. And if it doesn't make sense to us financially to collect, right, from those ICIs, for sure we know it didn't make sense for the producers to want to collect it. So it's all been left. And where I see this cost going is to our landfills, as the chair mentioned. And has there been any opportunity for staff to look at what the extra cost of all, because I'm going to make an assumption, most of the recycling from those ICIs will end up in the landfill. No one's going to take a minute or half an hour out of their small business to drive to a landfill at any time. So I'm just sort of wondering, do we know what the extra cost will be to the county for having all that extra in our landfills? That's my first question.
Director McCullough.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. I agree with your comments entirely, Councillor Hamlin. I think the majority of that, you know, as a small business, bottom line means everything. They could go out and contract for separate collection. They could box it up and bring it to us. What I'd hope is a small business would box it up and take it back home and put it out at their with the rest of their own material. But I think you're right. A significant portion of this is going to end up in the garbage. We're still going to provide garbage and organics collection to those units. So what we're talking about is 2,100 units right now. So essentially that would be a 1.4% increase in the amount of garbage that we're dealing with, because that 2,100 units is 1.4% of what we have. And the amount of garbage on a tonnage basis compared to recycling is about the same. So if that all went in, we'd be in the worst case about a 1.4% increase in your garbage. I don't think you're going to see it all go in, essentially because they may not have the garbage capacity without buying tags or something like that. So.
Okay, well, thank you for that, and maybe for your lobbying efforts, you might consider if you can put a number to that and estimate, say, over 10 years what the cost will be to the largely residential taxpayers of our county for this new program. The other question I have is, it was running through my head, is there any way we can levy costs just on the ICIs we pick up from? Like, and this is a legal question, I'll say, whether the county has the authority to levy a property tax for certain users of that service. And I'll leave it with you because I don't expect an answer right now, but if we don't, maybe another thing to be asking the province for is that authority to do that.
Director McCullough.
If I could partially address that. I don't have an absolute answer whether a separate charge could be levied just to those IC&I locations. One of the thoughts I have is every time this is an addition to the cost that they already have to pay in taxes, it becomes an opt-in or opt-out based on that cost. if we're going to be providing that service, it's going to be a very expensive service, where currently it's, in the range of, let's say $70 or $80 for the cost of collection or recycling. We think it's going to be multiples of that. Are they willing to pay that increased cost, or would you be talking just, the costs that we're dealing now and be somehow subsidized otherwise? It's not just the cost of collection, though. We would have to pay for transferring it, processing it, and currently we're doing that right now. So just to be clear, for all the IC&I locations, we're getting fully compensated for the residential. We're not getting any compensated for the IC&I. But at least it's at that, $50, $60 per household for the collection cost. And that's off the top of my head. I'm not certain that's right. But let's say it is. We have to pay all the cost of the recycling transfer, haulage, and processing costs, but we do not get any revenue currently. That's Circular Materials Ontario's decision. We don't get that revenue back. So basically, we're paying for that right now. We did have a debate, and to go another way, we did have a debate many, many years ago, back probably as far as 2008, 2010, about instead of putting it on the cost of waste collection on the general levy, work it out as a price per unit. I believe we decided that we could do that, but because of the 16 member municipalities, the internal cost to set that up and track that program was going to made the whole program financially unviable. So that was a previous decision of council. I think we'd run into those same issues, certainly dealing with a lower number than the 150,000 we'd have to now, down to the 2,100, but it would be a beast to set up for the financial section, I believe.
Okay, and if I can just have one last question and a comment. I'm so concerned about not having recycling in our schools and municipalities, like pickup. At our schools, there's been such a concerted effort over the decades to encourage kids to recycle. And for all the, so anyway, I just want to leave that thought. And also, I've been in, I'm sure many of us have been in small countries, in the Caribbean or wherever, where there's no recycling. And I always think, oh, what a banana republic this is. They can't even separate their garbage. So I just, for those visiting our communities, and maybe this speaks to my colleague Scott's comment that, maybe we should be picking up in our downtown areas, whether there's a BIA or not, because I just think it's such a bad look for our communities. So I'll just leave it by saying, if this goes ahead and we're not collecting and we can't accommodate picking up even from schools and municipalities, maybe we should be doing something to encourage the schools and municipalities to get together to hire their own facility, although the cost, I can't even imagine, us at council and Collingwood debating, okay, we're going to pick up. I don't know. I'm just going to leave this out there. I just can't believe we would do that. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamlin. Director?
Through you, Madam Chair, I may have misled you. I didn't mean to, and I'm sorry if I did. The collections in the schools will continue. The county will no longer be responsible for it. Simcoe will instead. As far as secondary and elementary, those programs that are in there now are meant to continue. It won't be a county truck picking it up anymore post 2026, but they are considered eligible. And we did a lot of advocacy to be able to get that done because they were not initially included, and then the County of Simcoe's advocacy amongst a couple other municipalities did change that requirement. There are no post-secondary collections. You are absolutely correct, though, on municipalities. Your buildings themselves, your libraries, your arenas, your rec centers, they will not be serviced if they are right now, and they would have to be separately collected. I think there's probably good reason for the county to work with our purchasing department and share the results of that sort of thing, because it only makes sense to collect from larger locations like that with a front-end truck. Anyways, that's what we're doing at our building here right now. It's our truck that runs around. But the main reason our truck was running around was because the 100 some odd schools that we're collecting from. So we won't have to do that anymore. So now that the that requirement is gone, we'll probably have to set up a separate contract for recycling from buildings like these. But the schools themselves will be. There's another aspect to this that's not mentioned in the report, but you bring it up. It's called public space recycling. Post 2026. Simcoe is required to set up public space recycling for parks and let's call them downtown cores and sidewalks. It's not yet determined how that's going to be done. It's not yet determined. There is a formula that's incredibly hard to negotiate to determine how many bins would be provided and serviced, but they're supposed to be serviced at a level that would keep it from overfilling. I also worry if they don't do this for the IC&I, they don't provide the service for the IC&I, why they wouldn't just walk outside their door and overload the public space recycling cart that's right on the sidewalk outside their shop.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Measures.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This whole topic is quite troubling to me, given that this county and this whole region has done such a great job at diversion. Diversion rates have always been something we've been very proud of, and so this is troubling to read this and to see that this is going to be a dramatic change. So the first thing, if I can ask, can we receive your presentation here, this PowerPoint? I don't think it was on our agenda, so I didn't see it anyway, but it'd be great to have that. And I also support the comment that came from Councillor Smith in regards to the strong communication plan. We must have a strong communications plan, and I would encourage the communications team here at the county to develop speaking notes for all members of this House, if not all members of elected bodies across this whole area, so that we have an understanding and a better way to deliver information to the residents as this rolls out. And I'm sure the communication may change a little bit, as you suggest that there is going to be some changes come forward. I'm mostly concerned, too, about the nonprofit sector. Just as an aside, it is Nonprofit Sector Appreciation Week this week, and here we are talking about taking recycling away from the nonprofit sector, such as daycare centers that are located at local churches, or local food banks that are located at local community centers or churches. It's troubling to me that we're going to be doing that type of service and taking that service away, putting it into the hands of someone else, and don't even know if it's going to happen. So I think it all comes down to the fact that we need to have that discussion again, Council, in regards to landfill sites. And I'm sorry to bring it up, but it's true. We are going to be seeing a lot more recycling being diverted back into the waste stream, and that's going to be filling up our landfill sites, remaining landfill facilities that we have, and we are not going to be able to handle that. And so I'm sorry to bring it up, but it does need to be discussed. And so I would encourage part of that letter that's going to be penned by the warden to include comments about that landfill sites need to be approved. There are no new landfill sites being approved across Ontario. It's just not happening. And yet we're producing more and more of this waste. Now we're going to have this problem with diversion problem going back. To me, we're going to get at a standstill. And so those are my comments. But I would ask if you could comment on, I know it's difficult, to tell me, has there been any discussion about any new landfill sites happening either in our area or in the province?
Director McCullough, who still has bruises from Site 41.
I know, I was very careful to say that. I respect what he's saying. So.
Yes, there are a couple of private companies that are putting in for waste disposal, and we're watching that quite closely. So there are some things they're not approved yet. I believe the hope is there that they will be. Would their construction solve the landfill crisis that we're in with under 10 years left in the province? No. Would it increase it to maybe 11 or 12 years? Probably. But the crisis is there. There are private entities that are going forward with submissions through the ministry to either extend the life of the landfill or look at a new waste disposal system or an increase to their waste disposal system.
Thank you, Councillor Measures. Councillor Rawson.
Thank you. Councillor Measures and Hamlin echoed my comments and sentiments about landfill. I think that's the unintended consequence that we're all grappling and dealing with. I think the other piece is this waste management issue is going to fall to the lower tier municipality where we're going to have to pick up the loss where it's going to be on our street and our garbage cans on our corners. And I think the last part of this motion speaks to the warden's letter to the ministry. I think we need more advocacy to the lower tiers. I'm going to bring this to my council. I think we all need to advocate and push and bring this forward. We have to come to our MPPs and we need to be loud and proud and do that with all of our member municipalities across the province. So the unintended consequence will be the cost to us through our landfills, which Councillor Measures and Hamlin have already brought up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Leduc.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really struggled with this one today. When I was reading it, I thought, where am I going to go with this one? But I can tell you that I'm not going to support the report today. The information there, Mr. McCullough, is great, and I understand where you came from with this. I just have too many questions myself. How did Muskoka do it with the BIA? Can we look at that, and can we look at other alternatives? I mean, I want to be a leader. We do a great diversion here now, and we're talking about 2,100 units. I'm not sure about bonusing. We already have them in the system. So if we stayed with that system and we said, we wanted to provide that service somehow, I would think that that's not bonusing. I'm not sure, but I just have too many questions that I'd like to see looked at and reviewed because, again, I want to be a leader here. I don't want to be. There's just too many negatives when we actually talk about just removing the service. It's our small business. It's our mom and pop shops that we're going to deal with. And yes, we are going to deal with it at our level. We're going to have to take this on at our level. So the negatives is our landfill is going to impact. It's going to be an impact to this county council. It's an impact to the residents, an impact to the businesses. There's just too many negatives to look at it to say I can support this report today. I would love to see alternative solutions. You say 6 or 7 times the cost. I'm not sure about that. We're 2,100 units. If I did a 4-day cycle, it was 500 businesses a day that we had to pick up. I don't know if one truck can do that. There's hydrogen trucks out there. There's ways that we can mitigate the impact to the environment. And I think the message being here today is that we want to reduce the impact on the environment. Climate change is something we have to look at. And if we allow this to just say, well, you know what, we're giving up because the province said this is not good for us and they want to do ICI, I think that's a mistake that I don't want to say to people out there, that we want to just say, go ahead and put it in our landfill or throw it wherever you need to throw it, because we're all going to pay for that down the road. So it's a tough decision. Your arguments are there. I just think I'd like to see some more opportunities on to say, how did Toronto do it? How did Peel do it? How did the business, Muskoka do it? I mean, Muskoka is as wide as us, so I don't know what the location, you talked about 100 kilometers for 446 units on a regular pickup versus if you did the 2,100, it's 100 for 6 units. Now those are numbers, you're using houses and everything else, but really, can we lower that impact and can we lower that and get 400 if you did a 4-day or 5-day, 1 truck, maybe 2 trucks, there's alternatives here, and I want to look at alternatives. Today I can't support it because I just have too many unknowns, and I would like to decide to say, I want to be a leader in the environment. I don't want to be saying that we're just going to give up on our mom and pop shops. They just got hit with paying the federal grant back, where a lot of them were talking about going belly up. So I think it's time we sit here, support it. It's on their tax bill. A lot of them pay quite a heavy fee for their recycling. So I think it's something that we need to look at, and we need to be a little bit more sound about our decision today and make sure that we don't give up on them. We're behind the 8 ball, you said, when it comes to offering contract anyway. So a little bit more behind 8 ball is not something I'm going to worry about. So I can't support it today because I just need some more answers.
Director McCullough.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. A couple of thoughts towards that. I understand the position and the belief and feeling on that. Just for clarity, we assume that we were rerunning the same kilometers of roads to collect from the IC&I in that example I gave you. If it was limited to the downtown cores, it would be much less cost impactful. But then we're basically getting money from everyone, including residential units. They're already getting the service and paying just for those. Now it's less than 2,100. Let's say it's 1,500 units. We're paying for all that service, and everyone else is paying for it. I just to point that out, and I would note as well, some of the information and discussion and that came at the Roma conference and has continued with some of the senior leaders is, would the county be willing to pay at the per cost rate for Simcoe to do the collection while they're already en route? And I said, I cannot speak for council, but as staff, I'd be willing to recommend that. Because I thought that would be, but the only way I think you can reasonably get through there is to the advocacy, this by saying, we're not responsible for that anymore. We'd be willing as an interim move, because we think the long term is all eligible all locations that producers sell into should be eligible sources. But to get there, we'd be willing to pay the per cost per unit for those ineligible until the legislation can be enacted that would show that everyone would be collected from.
So I'm absolutely good with that. I would say the same thing. The advocacy is real key here. But as you know, a lot of us pay different rates for the service. So I don't worry about who's going to pay for it. I think it's something that I can support, trying to provide the service for our small business in the downtown core. I think we can do it much more cost effective. So I look forward to, I'm sorry I can't support it now, but I do look forward to some answers and some results to look at some different alternatives for this solution.
Thank you. Alternate Councillor Catherine McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor Dillon. I would like to go back to the initial statement that was on this report. Producers should be responsible managing recycling regardless of source. We're discussing a cost, not only financially, but the environmental cost. Everybody look outside, the climate change that concerns us all. So I'm not familiar with what the county is considering, such a thing as social media, get everyone to jump on the bandwagon to apply pressure to both federal and provincial governments on the source.
Thank you, Alternate Councillor. Councillor Sandy McDonald.
Thank you, Chair Dolan. Just through to Director McCullough. I'm just going to speak on that I am a small business and that I do try to make sure that nothing goes in my garbage. My garbage may go out sometimes once every 2 months, and saying to take it home or whatever. I try to do that at home too. So if you're doing the job that we had set out for everyone to do, I think it would be very hard for us to be taking it to where we're practicing what we've been taught to do or what we preach. So it's just from me being a small business. So when I go down our street, and I was just trying to figure it out, I see very little garbage, but I do see all the recycling out. And I do understand that, that the cost is probably maybe over what we would want to be spending, but I think that to the comments that you have made today to us, that there is some kind of leadway to be able to make those talks with other, whether it's a company or whether it's with the government, to try to do something. I would just hate to think that after us taking all those years to try to get businesses, residential, to do one way, and now we're asking, okay, you have lots of room in your garbage, and that's what they will do, because I don't see them taking it home. I really don't, unfortunately. Thank you.
Understand.
Director?
Through you, Madam Chair, I understand your comments. I would say that the advocacy needs to be with the province. Simcoe, the pro that is doing it, has stated over and over again, they are only doing what they're legislated required to do, which is the eligible units, as we've talked and discussed today. They are not doing anything further. We've asked specifically if they would do the collection for the IC&I, and others have asked that same question and pass on the cost to us, and they said, no, that's not what they're required to do, and that's not what they're doing. So it really is to the province that needs to have that change made.
Thank you. Other questions or comments on this? Councillor Anderson and then Councillor Fowler.
Thank you. And it might be a bit contrary to some of the comments that my colleagues have made here today. But I think if we are trying to send a stronger message to the province, I disagree with the second part of the recommendation, and I think we should get out of the business completely. I don't think we should be investing in our landfill or our transfer stations, especially if we're going to be doing eligible and ineligible and having to sort that. If we're not legislated to have that requirement ourselves, then I think it sends a stronger message to the third party should be providing that service. So I would support option 2 in your report, just for the sake of saying, if we're not in this game anymore, then we shouldn't be in the game at all.
Director McCullough?
Understood. Through you, Madam Chair, I understand where you're coming from. The rationale that staff put together in looking at that is we didn't see, in the future where we're no longer responsible for recycling, we saw it no different than many of our other diversion programs we have on our site, like tires and drywall and mattresses and rubble, that we can divert from landfill through another means. But what we said, and the reason we've decided to put recommend to you today that there be a cost assigned, when that actually would happen when we know the cost a lot more later, is because of the cost to us. Just like we charge a cost for wood waste, right? We don't want it to go in the landfill, but that dimensional lumber has a cost. Like we have to pay to grind it, we have to pay to have someone come pick it up and take it away from us to be reused, which is preferable to going in the landfill. So we just saw recycling becoming a similar diversion program in the future when we're no longer responsible for it. That's where we came from as staff to put that in that way.
Follow up, Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, I completely respect that answer and the concept. I just believe that this is separating two distinct sources of material, and I think that cost is going to be cost prohibitive. I can understand having to divert tires or wood waste because there's that source, but we're now dividing it, sorting it, transferring it in two different sources. And the previous comment, I guess, to your presentation as well was the third party would be providing potentially different areas for this to happen in the future.
For curbside unserviced residential units, yes, they have to provide that alternate source. They have not talked to us to provide that on their behalf. What I was talking about is if we were to provide it on their behalf, we'd have to keep it separate from everything else, and I just don't think that's practical as well as you.
Right, and then I think the concern would be if we're going to be doing that now, does that transition into us taking that service on for them, or do they provide different sites? And then we've already made the investment, and I guess that's what I'm getting at. We're making the investment in doing this, which we may not need to do in 3-4 years.
Director?
Understood. They have not yet come to us to ask could they use our facilities for those residents that don't have that service, mostly in the northern part of the county, but there's a few private roads we can't get down in the south, but it's mostly in the northern part of the county. We can cross those roads later on too. This doesn't require that we do that. It's just what we're future planning for looking at as a way. We have a strong history of diversion from landfill, and recycling is just another stream that we saw it as we went forward.
Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quick question. I'm looking at this, and then we're seeing the system breaking down into two separate ICI and residential. Now, removing the commercial and the industrial, like the small businesses and the non-for-profit. Hypothetically speaking, an industrial looks at the cost and says, you know what, I'm not dealing with this, and dumps it all into the Simcoe County waste program, like just throws it in the garbage. Someone catches on and says, hey, they're diverting the recycling back into the waste. Now, who holds them accountable? And is it because it's the province and the county, who takes the lead on it? And what are the consequences if someone is caught with these actions?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's something that we can discuss. Certainly, as to our bylaw, we have our updated bylaw coming forward. We do have the ability in that updated bylaw to say, look, there's too much divertible material in your garbage. We're not going to take it until you clean it up. hugely manpower intensive to be able to roll that out. So I would warn you that we do have the ability to do it. Do we have the staff to do it on that basis? I'm not certain. But they would be doing something that's legal so far as the province is concerned. Because Reg 103, which says businesses must divert, talks about the number of employees, the square footage, that to be covered by that regulation is so high that, as I said, the Auditor General said only 2 to 3% of businesses in the province would actually qualify for having to have and set up their own recycling program inside. That doesn't say that the province might not come along and say at some future point, no recycling in the garbage. There's been talks about landfill prohibitions against organics, against recycling for many years. That's never, it basically was considered it was coming in the legislation, but the Conservative government has said that's not something they're looking at this time.
Follow-up, Councillor?
So in essence, what I'm understanding is that if a situation occurs, the province is going to wash their hands of it. That's going to land on the shoulders of the Simcoe County, and due to the manpower concerns and the time and effort, in essence, if anybody who has a large industrial base that wishes to do this, they have, in essence, carte blanche, because there's going to be no real repercussions moving forward with this. Correct?
Unless they, as we've said, we're recommending some legislative changes that would cover that. But as things stand, without those legislative changes, my understanding is that, yeah, the province has no teeth in it. We can decide what's in the garbage that we pick up. But like you say, the enforcement of that is time-consuming.
Director, could I ask you just to remind us that comment that you made about Remera and Honda?
Oh, well, there's two different comments. We were talking about the importance. One of the other things we talked about was the importance of organics collection and organics in IC&I. I made the point that with respect to a program that we're doing at Casino Rama, we're taking all the organics out of the kitchens in Casino Rama, and just that one IC&I location creates more organics on a per ton basis than all of the municipality it's actually inside. So what we were trying to do was trying to push the province to take some action on the IC&I section for organics. I guess the allusion to Honda is that we've often used that as an example. Look, our program, our curbside recycling program, is not going to provide any benefit to Hondas of this world, but to the 2-3 person travel agency in downtown Collingwood, to the small barber shop in Coldwater, to that type of business. It's perfect. It's the level of service they want, and it's the truck that's already on the street going right by doing the work. That's why we think it's important.
Thank you for that. Councillor Fryer?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Director McCullough. This is a lot of information to take in, and I'm going to ask for something that you may have already explained, but I'm just going to have to do it. You mentioned about the CMO saying that they wouldn't deal with anything they're responsible for. And I think earlier you mentioned that the CMO will be responsible for parks, and something else you mentioned, I think.
Yeah. It's called public space recycling, and it's meant to be recycling locations in public parks and downtown cores, like on the sidewalk. That's supposed to start in 2026. Heard some rumblings that CMO's pushing back on that, and I would agree. They have an incredible amount of work responsible for right now with the rolling out of all the different things. Maybe that it may end up getting pushed. I'm not certain, but as the legislation sits now, the province, I believe, is doing a great job in holding them to the responsibilities, the legislative responsibilities that they have in answering the regulations with respect to having to have that set up basically January 1st, 2026. We just haven't heard anything coming back how that's going to be done and who's going to do the pickup in those locations. We'd imagine it would be the same company that's going to be picking up from the residential since they're already in the area. But, you know, there's a lot of communication, I would imagine, that has to go on direct with the municipalities as to where would you like those locations. They may do there is a formula set up in the legislation that's quite difficult to try and get your head around. But let's say Collingwood, they say, based on the number of the population in Collingwood, you get 20 bins. They're probably going to come to you and say, where would you like those 20 bins? And set up through your downtown core and or at your public parks.
Just follow up.
Follow up.
Is that a particular area that we could really advocate about and get the BIAs behind and things like that? Because it seems to me like the rumblings are there. The province is looking at the issues that we've talked about, and if it seems like there might be, that's because I understand the way you've explained it, that would be a major benefit to us if they could get that responsibility back onto the CMO, so that they have to accept it, and we have to come up with plans on how to deal with it.
Yeah,
so is that a particular area we could
as far as I'm concerned, I'd say the CMO's marching orders are pretty clearly laid out as it pertains to the public space recycling. My concern is they haven't started the communications with each of the municipalities that they're going to have to determine where they want the bins placed for that public space recycling. I think the advocacy we have here that we need to talk about is truly the IC&I sector that really needs, especially the small small businesses that would fit into the type of collection that we're doing now. And that going away is where I think the advocacy needs to go to the province to try and push the legislation to either require that CMO at some future point includes all those sources, but immediately at the very least allows CMO to charge us the per unit rate that they have for their collection for that 1.4% of units that is part of our collection program right now.
Just a follow-up comment, but it is an area then that we can be really working hard on the communication aspect of it.
Sure, absolutely. Okay. I mean, your work with your MPPs is going to be very, very important. Certainly your businesses as well. And hearing the messages that we've had today, I think our communications teams here as well as our solid waste team, that we'll work together to see what kind of program we can put out, because we're going to have to notify all the businesses that are served by our program right now that this is only until January 1st, 2026, after which you've got to be on your own. We don't, it's unfortunate that we're at this position. Here's why we are. Here's who you can speak to about that.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, sorry, Councillor Cox.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair to Rob, I totally agree on that, because no matter what happens, we need this information out. As you can see, it's going to be in the news, and we need to get this information out to the businesses, and to follow on what Councillor Smith and Measure said. This is very important to get it out. No matter what we decide, that has to start to get ready to come out with in a very short period of time. Just some basic, almost what you gave us with this slide presentation, because it's hard to get your head around it, and there's so many legislations and so many things going on, but just some basic, facts, not hearsays of what is going to be happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Hamlin, and then I think we'll call a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It seems to me that this is a bit of an issue of the province, maybe unintentionally, but continuing to download costs. And I'm just wondering, do we have, like you've explained, what the additional cost would be, or the reasons why there'd be an additional cost to the county if we maintained the service that we're considering not maintaining? Is there a number to that? Like, could that be part of our communications plan, that we're not continuing because the additional cost to the county is X and Y that's been created by the province over and above?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I don't think there's much we can do except estimate the cost as is laid out in this report. The reason for it is, we'll have to go to the street and ask for what those costs are. So we can put it an estimate of what those total costs could be, but it would depend on, my estimate would be based on providing the same level of service to all those IC&I units that we currently do now. So we'll try and put that together. I'm not certain that the province is looking at downloading anything on this. I'll tell you my rationale for that, right? The municipalities got together and said, we're all doing this recycling program. I think it makes a lot of sense. We'd like to get compensated by the people that are producing the stuff that we're having to pick up. And eventually a deal was worked out, and I believe in the early 2000s, that's when we were supposed to start getting 50%. Advocacy through AMO and through many different parties said 50% isn't enough. It's a fight every year. Maybe they should be compensating 100%. Province said, okay, if we're gonna talk to the stewards, and the stewards said, if we're gonna pay 100%, we're not going to rely on the municipalities to do the collection. We think we can do it better. And to be quite certain, if they're responsible for 100% of the cost, that's a totally justifiable position. I understand where they're coming from. I think what's been lost, and we did advocate for this way back when the legislation was coming in to cover all sources. We spent a lot of time on the schools, as I mentioned earlier, to ensure that they were covered. We did advocate that all IC&I units, at least the ones that we represented and did the collection from, were included. The misunderstanding, I think, is the province just didn't, they saw the municipalities are responsible and have a mandate and a requirement to provide the collection for single-family units, and really all resident. They went beyond that and included all residential units, because we don't have a responsibility to do recycling collection to multifamily units. That's more than 5 on the same piece of property. So they went further and did actually include all those multifamily units in this. They just missed on the IC&I.
Thank you, Director.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for all your hard work on this. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to close it off, if I could, take that privilege again. So just to take a step back at the 30,000-mile look, producer responsibility is very much a good thing for municipalities and holds those producers responsible, which is why it's called that. So I'll speak to the women in the room who buy cosmetics that come in a package this big, and you rip that off, and then you rip the next layer off, and you end up with a jar this big inside. Why should municipal taxpayers be subsidizing a cosmetic maker who uses all this unnecessary packaging, because they're no longer responsible for, they're not responsible for the end of life of that. Now they are. And so we need to, for that reason, make sure that it goes the way it goes. And I too want to be a leader in this, but I think being a leader in this, I need a team behind me. And if we say, never mind IC&I group, we're going to take care of everything for you, they're not going to be behind us. But if we say, look, this is what's happening, we need the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, we need the Ontario BIA Association, we need the Small Business Association, we need the nonprofit associations, all to advocate with us to make sure that this cost is, at least, we advocate that this be, or if not, we've still got Plan B, where we can actually negotiate with CMO to pay for the mom and pop shops that are in our municipality. I totally get the City of Barrie. The City of Barrie has this much geography and one downtown. The County of Simcoe has this much geography, and I would hasten to guess how many downtowns. I know I have 4. So the cost of doing all that is I think, unreasonable to put on the residential taxpayer in Simcoe County. So with that, I'm going to say there's been a requirement to split. So I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder for the first 3 items on the recommendation. Is there a mover? Councillor Fryer and Councillor Brian Smith. that item CCW 2024-022 dated February the 13th, 2024 regarding recycling services for ineligible sources be received, and that starting January 1st, 2026, ineligible sources within the County of Simcoe will not receive curbside collection of recycling provided by the County of Simcoe, and as of January 1st, 2026, the county's waste management facilities accept recycling from all sources, eligible and ineligible, at a fee. And I'm going to also ask for a friendly amendment to the mover and seconder, and that the County of Simcoe develop a comprehensive communications strategy to make this, to make all ICIs, small ICI users aware. Is that okay to the mover and the seconder? Okay, questions or comments on that? All those in favor of the recommendation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I think I counted 22 or 23, so that carries. Does it? Any opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that carries. 5. Thank you. That's carried. And I have another, so moved by Councillor Scott, seconded by, this is for the fourth bullet, Councillor Anderson, that the warden send a letter of to the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks advocating for the inclusion of ineligible sources in applicable regulations. Seeing no more communication, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thanks. That was great conversation. Are there any other matters for consideration for corporate services today? Seeing none, I'll move it back to the warden. Thank you.
Thank you. Normally I'd break, but I know we're going to lose a bunch of councillors. So let's push through performance. If we do have to in camera, we'll take a break then. So we'll go through performance. Chair Cox. Thank you.
Okay, we're at item 12.1, Tourism Simcoe County Delegated Authority for Municipal Accommodation Tax. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor McDonald, second by Councillor Smith. Mike Smith. The recommendation is that item CCW 2024-051 dated February 13th, 2024 regarding Tourism Simcoe County entering into agreements with member municipalities with regards to the municipal accommodation tax MAT be received, and that the Director, Public Affairs be delegated authority to negotiate agreements and direct the activities of Tourism Simcoe County for the purpose of receiving the promotions portion of the municipal accommodation tax from a lower tier member municipality, and that the necessary bylaw be presented to authorize the warden and county clerk to execute such agreements and necessary amendments for the purpose of receiving the promotions portion of the municipal accommodation tax. Any questions or comments? Yes. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you. First, just a quick question. Are we the only lower tier municipality in Simcoe County that's funneling these funds to the RTO, like through the county? Are we the first?
Catherine.
Yeah, thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, Midland is the first.
Lovely. Okay. So just some background on this. This was a contentious issue with our hotel operators in our community because, we're really doing this to them. And they bear the brunt of this because short-term operators who, there's plenty of in our community, we don't have any regulations in Midland yet, are immune from this. So, you can't just, because there's no regulatory body to make it a requirement for them to participate in MAT, it would be voluntary, and we already know where that would go. So the hotel operators were all, literally so against putting this in. So after some really good, fulsome meetings with them, Deputy Mayor Conton and I spent a lot of time in a room hashing this out, the rationale behind it, why we needed to put it in, looking for compromises, and my goal is always to do it with them, not to them. And we got to that point. I'm really proud to say we got to that point with our hotel operators with a couple of conditions. One is that we phased the rate in over 3 years because they're still clawing out of the impacts of the recession, as everyone is. And the second was that, we form a committee in our community to help steer the 50% or so that we keep out of the MAT tax, and that we focus primarily on destination marketing in our own community, especially around stay and play packages, because it really needed to benefit the hotel operators. As much as, I'd like it to benefit the whole community and the STRs, the hotel operators are the ones taking it in right on the face, having to deal with angry people at the front counter. Why am I paying this tax? They probably had a negative interaction if they watched any of the news about the way Niagara Falls rolls it out, so clouded and subterfuge, and it's a different number, and no one can explain where it's going, and it's optional there apparently. But anyway, so it was a real mess. So we kind of stepped in this initially, figuring this is important for our community, and that clearly sending the money down to the county makes sense to us. But the one thing that I promised the hotel operators that we would do is we would really lobby hard. Like, we'll control what we keep with our half. We'll lobby hard that the county focuses those funds on destination stay and play type packages, at least for the first 3 years while this got off the ground. But I said, I really don't know how much influence we have at the county if they accept doing this for us, or if the money will be spent for, destination marketing in Bradford or something like that, one of the other member municipalities. We are the county after all. So my question is, as much as I really appreciate this, I'd like to be able to tell the hotel operators who are doing all the collecting for us, not only are we going to have some local input in our community about where the dollars are spent, but that the county will also, tell me how they're going to focus the money that originated in Midland back into Midland. And, arguably my North Simcoe neighbors too, because we all benefit from each other. So that was really my question, and that wasn't answered in this, and maybe that comes in a different forum, but because we're the first one, I guess we'll all learn together in a minute.
I just wanted to comment that Lake Country does this through Aurelia, and that was part of the conditions was for Aurelia. So the MAT taxes are on other ones, but they just haven't run through, but I'll let Catherine answer that.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, we are working directly with Midland, with staff in Midland, and all the proceeds that we are receiving, the promotional portions of the tax, will 100% be spent in Midland. And in fact, we're working with staff right now on stay and play packages. That's exactly what we're doing. So we are working with the working group with the town of Midland, and it will be spent on Midland.
Thank you. That's very reassuring to hear, and I'll make sure I pass that along to the hotel operators. They're really being good sports about this, and it's a bit of an experiment, and we'll see whether, in fact, it does drive away tourism, as some people were afraid it would. But I appreciate your efforts, and I look forward to seeing this evolve as the MAT is phased in over the next 3 years.
Councillor Dolan.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, and I wanted to thank Mayor Gordon for being the first. I can tell you that last term of council, Innisfil considered licensing short-term accommodation, which would include MAT tax. Significant portion of that coming from Friday Harbor Resort. Unfortunately, it didn't pass, but we also were looking at working with the County of Simcoe and had been assured at that time as well that any MAT revenue would come back to Innisfil for that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, 13.1, Audit and Finance Committee report. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Deputy Warden Coghlan, second by Councillor Stavern. That the recommendations contained within the Audit and Finance Committee report dated February 6, 2024 be approved. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. 13.2, Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee report. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Missing, second by Councillor Fowler, that the recommendations contained within the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee report dated January 23, 2024 be approved with the exception of the Township of Tay and the Township of Oro-Madani recommendations. Questions? All in favor? Carried. 13.3, Bursary Committee. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Walker, that the recommendations contained within the Bursary Committee report dated February 6, 2024 be approved. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you. Everybody's seen the agenda and the motions within the closed session. Does anybody feel the need to go in camera? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I'll just read the motions and we'll move on. So first one, I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Fowler, second by Councillor Norris. The direction in camera and recommendations contained within confidential item CCW 2024-038 dated February 13, 2024 regarding a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by a municipality or local board be approved and voted upon in accordance with section 239(2)(b) of the Municipal Act. All in favor? That is carried. And for the next motion, could I have a mover? Councillor Brian Smith, second by Councillor Miskimans. The direction in camera and recommendations contained within confidential item CCW 2024-047 dated February 13, 2024 regarding personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, be approved and voted upon in accordance with section 239(6)(b) of the Municipal Act. All in favor? And that is carried. So now I would look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Measures, second by Councillor McDonald, that the February 13th, 2024 meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned at 10:39 a.m. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everybody. And yes, ECDEV, if we could reconvene at 11 o'clock, is that okay with the chair? 11 o'clock for ECDEV back in this room? Okay, and come on down and join us, Brenda.